Welcome to IP Goes Pop, your source for exploring the interface between intellectual property and pop culture. The IP Goes Pop podcast series is created and produced by Volpe Koenig, an intellectual property law firm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Visit us at vklaw.com. This program should not be considered legal advice. Please consult an attorney for your specific situation. And now your hosts, intellectual property attorneys, Michael Snyder and Joseph Gushue.
Greetings and cheers, listeners. Welcome back to a fun-filled, exciting throwback. In fact, we're throwing back millions of years this year, just a little teaser. But today we are the podcast that travels back in time, but with science from the future. Joining us here today, in fact, this week on IP Goes Pop, we're talking about Jurassic patents, combination of Jurassic eras and patents. So joining me is my co-host, Joseph Gushue. Joe, welcome back. Please bring your library of IP knowledge to this episode, as you always do.
Happy to be back, Mike. And it's great. We have a spring recording right now, and it's start of summer movie season. And it's great to talk about the Jurassic Park movies and how they related to the world of patents.
Which I think people will be surprised just how much they do, but they'll be surprised and hopefully learn a little bit along the way, but not too much. That's not our goal. We're also lucky enough this week to be joined by our Ph.D. guest, Douglas Bucklin of Volpe Koenig. Doug, could I call you a genetic hobbyist or a hobby geneticist, or neither?
A hobbyist in genetics would be fine. I am a doctor of science, so you can call me Dr. Science, and we'll put in that cheesy theme from NPR from years ago.
Oh, no, I think it's a great idea. And our Dr. Science, our Doug Dr. Science merch will be available on the website. So just a little disclaimer before we get going. This is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, please seek out an attorney. But let's get going. This is exciting. So I'm going to set the table this week. What we've hinted at and what Joe mentioned and what Doug mentioned are, we're going to talk about the world of patenting genetic or genetically formed or cloned or DNA-based type of technology. And what better place to start than the movies that really put this on the pop culture map, the Jurassic Park movies. So in step one here, I just want to, as a group, lay the foundation, not with science, not with technology, not with intellectual property, but let's just go through the movies and see our opinions at a very high level and a kind of our breakdown and criticism. So let's start with the original 1993's Jurassic Park. I mean, seeing this movie, and again, you have to bring yourself back to a time when you were impressed by the special effects of whatever the era of the movie you're watching is. But at the time, I said to myself, you take a kid to this movie, it would be hard to convince them that dinosaurs did not exist. It looked that good at the time. Watching it today, I'm not sure, but I think that this set the bar pretty high. Of course, there's the famous scene of the water drop in the cup. But Joe, let me hear from you first on Jurassic Park, the original.
Well, I mean, directed by Steven Spielberg. And I can remember going to the movie theater for the experience. The sound was extremely loud. I was walking to the theater where I was watching it, and some other showings were going on. And it was a huge, huge cultural event. And I think everyone saw the movie at some point that summer. After the movie comes out, the Toronto gets a basketball team. They name it the Toronto Raptors. No one even really talked about a raptor before this movie. Now that's a part of American culture too. So you can't understate the impact that this movie had on just culture in general.
So Doug, let me ask you very high level before we get into the fun specifics. How'd you feel about the science and the way they laid it out in Jurassic Park, the original?
My Jurassic Park experience started a bit before the movie. I was a newly minted biotechnologist. I've gone through graduation and become a biotechnologist and microbiologist. My graduation present was the hardcover Jurassic Park. So I tore into that and read it, and I thought he was an idiot. The sequence he put in there was a standard cloning vector, and as an arrogant young DNA jock, I thought, well, that's such a stupid thing. But in hindsight, from where I sit now, That was a great book and a great bit of technology. And I think he actually predicted a lot of what is going on now scientifically. Maybe we are a bit away from cloning a dinosaur, but the underlying technology he talked about and what we might be able to do with it, I think is going to come true.
Well, Doug, it does bother me a little bit that you say that we're a bit away from cloning dinosaurs, because that's where a lot of my investments are in.
Well, we can get you there. People are talking about it. So we'll get you there.
That makes me feel a little bit better. All right. Well, let's go. So again, I think as scientists, and I think I'm going to relate this line or this quote from the movie, it was from chaos theorist
Ian Malcolm.
Yeah, Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum, of course.
He was the prophet.
And he said, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should. And I think we'll bring that in today is you were so preoccupied with filing your patent, you didn't stop to think if you should or if it was even possible. So going to, again, the lost world, a lot of people thought that the world should have maybe stayed lost when they saw this particular movie. I think that it was kind of a good guy, bad guy type movie and not that memorable.
No, I'm surprised they actually got Steven Spielberg to come back and direct that movie and Michael Crichton to write a book for that movie. So that just another thing goes to show the impact that the first film had and sort of spawned its own franchise. But yeah, I think a lot of people, it's very forgettable. I just watched the movie recently, actually, with my children, and there's a Blockbuster video in it, and that sparked a lot of questions. So that's sort of that was more interesting than the dinosaurs, I think, like what this is, which is another dinosaur, I guess.
So then we have Jurassic Park III. I just watched it a couple months ago. I have no recollection of this movie. I assume there were dinosaurs in it. I think I remember a pterodactyl.
Oh yeah, they go to a pterodactyl bird cage. That's the aviary type thing. But yeah,
I thought I dreamed that. Okay, I guess that was this movie.
Well, that movie was so impactful, it froze the franchise for 14 years. So that'll tell you the critical reception of that one.
So then we come to Jurassic World 2015. They bring in all new characters. They have a new theme park. They have the raptor whisperer.
Yes.
Who can help and control them. And then this is where some of the genetics come back and in the science, they're not just satisfied making dinosaurs, but we have to, again, look at our, human beings' hubris, and we have to now create a super dinosaur that is even more genetically modified than the previous dinosaurs. So that was really the scientific contribution. And then there's Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom 2018. I do remember a kingdom being fallen. I don't remember that much more from that one.
Yeah, they're weaponizing the dinosaurs in that one. And there's the black market auctioning of the dinosaurs that they've pulled off of the island because of a volcanic eruption. That was the franchise that brought us the Indominus Rex and the Indoraptor as the genetically modified T-Rex and Raptor. And it's amazing how people could be bored seeing dinosaurs in 10 to 15 years that they needed to enhance the dinosaurs. So that's another interesting note about these movies.
Yeah, I again saw this recently. Everything you just said sounded like the rantings of someone who was just making things up, and yet that was the movie. So, Doug, let's bring you in fully here. I mean, is it possible to clone dinosaurs or to do some of the things scientifically? What's your take here? And then let's spin it and talk about what would the patentable aspects of that be?
So on a really high theoretical level, yes, you could take some DNA you found in an ancient sample and engineer it to create a new life by doing some of the new technologies that are out there. On a practical level, ancient DNA is probably fairly degraded. So people are working on de-extinction of a lot of different organisms. Dinosaurs are on the far away list, but here are the approaches. One is to do kind of the Jurassic Park level. You find the DNA, you fix it with some frog DNA, you put it in an egg that has its own nuclei removed. So you're putting in the dinosaur nuclei, and voila, you make a dinosaur. The second way people are talking about it is to really reverse engineer the organism. So in the movies, they brought up birds and they reflected how dinosaurs, their closest living relative are birds. So we could start with a bird and predict which genes are more dinosaur-like and mutate and emphasize those genes and de-emphasize the feather genes to try to go backwards towards a dinosaur from the living beast. Another way would be to kind of do a hybrid of that. You take some dino DNA that you found and halfway reverse engineer a bird, and you kind of combine the two. And then the fourth approach is to, again, kind of reverse engineering, taking that bird and you activate dormant genes that are already in the bird and then deactivate more bird-like genes. And people have actually done this. They've taken the genes that control the morphology of bird beak formation, and they've inactivated those in the chick embryo. And what came out was something that had a dinosaur-like snout on it. So a real-life experiment has been done, and it's leading the path towards de-extinction of a dinosaur through these four approaches.
Do you think they're stopping to think if they should do this, or they're just preoccupied with doing it?
I don't know. I'd be pretty preoccupied with doing it. I think every scientist thinks, like Dr. Wu, in the movies, this is just a cool thing to do. Whether it should be done or not, we'll deal with that later. I think if I'm developing a chick in the lab that ends up having a dinosaur-like snout, that's going to raise some questions. And in fact, these embryos that they created, they actually destroyed. They didn't let them live out their natural life. So they saw the results and they ended it.
Now, this is on the animal side of Jurassic Park, but if we look back, it was actually Laura Dern's character, Dr. Ellie Sattler, who pointed out that it wasn't just animals, but they brought back the vegetation and the plant life. And from a scientific standpoint, is that in the same vein as the animal side? So that, the plant life, or is that, and also what are they working on in that area that might be similar to what we saw in, kind of recreating the jungle that these dinosaurs lived in?
It presents very similar technical hurdles that dealing with the ancient DNA, you're going to have to deal with degraded DNA. You're going to have to piece together what should have been there. So you'll look at closest living ancestors and try to patch together what should have been there in order to either do a synthetic approach or reverse engineer a living plant to go backwards towards it. So it's very similar, and I think has the same realm of possibility. If we take it in steps, let's do something that has more recently gone extinct and then work backward as we learn. Right now, there are plants that have recently gone extinct and animals on the animal side, woolly mammoths and dodo birds, carrier pigeons. We can look to those to see what we can do to de-extinct animals and keep on going.
There's also the issue, I'm not sure if this is more an ethical bioethicist discussion, but if we look at a movie like a Blade Runner, where you had the replicants who were copies of, and I don't know the science behind it in Blade Runner. I don't know how much they get into it, but replicants of humans, I'm sure that there are a lot of other issues are coming up. I'm really not sure, other than right now, I know they're creating organs for humans, but I do not know the how far that's going to go.
Well, years ago, at the time I received that hardcover copy of Jurassic Park, my advisor, he said to me, Doug, someday people are going to be doing biotechnology in the garages. And lo and behold, people are doing that now. There's a fellow who decided that he needs to liberate genetic engineering. So he's created the the CRISPR modification to make muscle grow better. And he's publicly shown himself injecting that into his own arm.
Well, he definitely sounds like someone that some people might want to hang out with that kind of activity. But let me ask this: what can you just break down? What is CRISPR for our IP Ghost Pop listeners who might not be on the cutting edge of genetics?
CRISPR is a defense mechanism in bacteria. So bacteria have found this way to inactivate viruses that infect them. It's a system that has a nucleic acid that binds to a foreign nucleic acid, and then that recruits in an enzyme that will come degrade that nucleic acid. The people that discovered it had the great idea, well, if we take that guide RNA, that nucleic acid that's detecting, and we redesign it to be a sequence we want to target in any genome, say a human genome or a dinosaur genome, we can direct that guide RNA there, and that will recruit the nucleic acid to make breaks there. And then we can also engineer the system to make the repair of that cut to be the way we want it to be. So what CRISPR means is that genetic engineering on higher animals and plants was really difficult and not likely until CRISPR came about. But now that CRISPR is here, it's really likely that people will do genetic engineering of all types.
So let me quickly, Joe, when you hear about kind of these type of self-healing things, give me 3 characters that reminds you of. I'm sure one will immediately jump out, but I bet you could think of 3.
I think Wolverine is always
That's good.
self-healing. Then I actually thought of from T2, the Terminator, even though that's not a person, that was self-healing also.
Right.
I don't know, Mike, what are your other self-healing ones?
I definitely thought of Wolverine. I think that the T2 or the T1000, right, was definitely one.
Yep.
And by the way, I think a lot of people connected a lot with that character more than other characters in that movie. So I don't know if he was the villain of the movie, but that's another podcast. Just a lot of the different X-Men have various versions.
Oh yeah, but Wolverine, he's the best.
Yeah, he's the one.
He's the best one.
So I have to think that some of this CRISPR was involved in his origin, what will be an origin story after his
Weapon X. Yeah, as the Canadian government was creating him, they.
Deadpool is another one.
Oh, correct. Yes, same thing. Canada, the Canada technology.
So we have our 3, and I guess I want to bring it more into the patent realm. So, what I have a vague recollection that in one of these 5 movies, for all I don't remember, I do remember someone mentioning patent or patented. What in the world of Jurassic Park could be patented under the current patent laws? And then first, Doug, I want to talk about that, and then I want to talk a little bit about inventorship. So first, what could have been patented in the Jurassic Park world?
Well, remember that cartoon they brought up with Mr. DNA and explained how they made the dinosaurs?
I love that cartoon.
Yeah, so they explained there that they had to fill in the gaps with frog DNA. And that was the Achilles heel to the whole project, because that frog DNA is what allowed those dinosaurs to breed eventually. But it also was synthetic. So every DNA construct they made to bring back a dinosaur included a synthetic construct with frog DNA. That's important to the patent purposes. The state of the law right now is that natural DNA cannot be patented, but synthetic DNA can. So if I make a construct that is from species 1 and species 2 linked together, that brings it into the realm of you can patent it. The dinosaur constructs, the dinosaurs themselves, the methods of making the dinosaurs, all of those are in the realm of patentable subject matter.
So I just want to back up a little bit. So the actual living dinosaur itself could somehow be covered by a patent. I know it doesn't mean, and I don't want people to, I think there's a disconnect here. It doesn't mean that they own that particular animal. It would mean that they own the patent covering this live animal. Is that right?
Right. So you can have a patent to a living thing as long as the living thing is synthetic. So take it to the realm of plants. You could have a claim that says a transgenic plant comprising gene A and gene B from an animal. That plant is patented. So someone can own the patent to that plant. They can forbid people from making, using, or selling that plant.
It sounds very science fiction-y when you say that, oh, we could have a patent that covers an actual living organism. But in fact, as you said, it's true. But I'm curious, and I want to bring in another. This is also a topic big in pop culture and many movies and books. But I want to bring in cloning. And let's say, and Joe, I think you might know where I'm going. Let's say Joe and I are possessed with some kind of special, I don't know how else, maybe force-like, some kind of spirit that is imbued in the universe, and we see trouble coming. So Joe and I travel to some planet. We make an army of clones from one particular fight. Joe, I think you know where I'm headed with this. And it's something we've talked about. We haven't done it yet. But if you're making a clone and not changing anything, is that something that can also be covered by a patent since it already exists, really?
No, that's the short answer. Remember Dolly the sheep? It was the first really successful clone of a higher organism. The patent on Dolly the sheep was denied. Our federal circuit said, no, it's the same thing as you can find in nature, so you can't have a patent to it. So cloned things are not patentable subject matter. There's another strike against you in that current US law says that you can't have a patent that would cover a human being. So you could have a synthetic dinosaur patent where you have a claim to the dinosaur itself because it's a synthetic construct. But even if I made a synthetic human, I wouldn't be able to get a patent to that synthetic human because the claim covers a human being.
Okay, so I think you just saved us a lot of trouble on our mission to create the clone army right there.
Well, we'd have to make a couple changes, Mike. That's all. We'd have to throw in a couple upgrades, I think.
You have to ask the question then, what is human? Because if the claim is to a synthetic organism that's half human, half dinosaur, is it a human being still? If I put one human gene into the dinosaur construct, does that become human? I'd say no. So I think I could argue that you should be able to get a valid claim for that construct. So your clone army, I'd say just make it 51% dinosaur.
Mike, we got to get back to the drawing board on this one. I think we have some fuel here.
Yeah. Listen, shred all the clone army original documents and let's open a new file on 50% dinosaur clone army. Also, I feel like we're treading into the ex machina area too.
Oh yeah,
of synthetic humans, and what that really means.
Well, that was more AI then, so we have to get the AI specialists here. I think Joe can handle that question.
I think that's a good teaser for a future podcast. Oh, by the way, just for our listeners, so the Federal Circuit is an appellate court that hears patent matters. They're right below the Supreme Court. So when you hear the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, that's who we're talking about. And they usually, or in most cases, are the last say about patent matters, except for the few cases that actually go up to the Supreme Court. Doug, you also identified some really interesting patents that were on certain animals. And I did want to talk about those. Some of these are owned by a company called Glowfish, and they are unsurprisingly fish that glow. But I think these are really interesting.
Right. So you've probably seen these if you've gone to the pet store with your kids. Kind of glow in the dark. They have green, orange, yellow, glow in the dark fish. And there's a patent. I'm looking at patent 10.798.923 right now. It says blue transgenic fluorescent ornamental fish. And they have other ones, but just to open that one up, the claims, well, this one's still a method of making the fish. So you take the tetra, so they start with a tetra, and they breed it with a transgenic tetra comprising a chromosomally integrated expression cassette encoding a fluorescent protein. So they're taking a fluorescent protein, which we get those mainly from jellyfish or fireflies and places like that. And so that fluorescent protein now is something that's not natural to the fish, and they're cloning it into the fish. That makes the fish synthetic. So that goes with our case law. It has to be a synthetic construct to be patentable subject matter. So once you get the fluorescent protein in there that comes from some other source, you can get a patent on it.
Once you have fish that glow, how do you ever go back to the non-glowing fish?
It's pretty boring.
Right. I'm thinking now as we go through this, and again, the interesting scientific part of the beakless, dinosaur-looking bird that they created and can create, I suppose, as many as they want. But I'm thinking, it seems like the 1990s to early 2000s were the eras of, in pop culture, talking about genetic information or excuse me, genetic engineering. Joe, do you remember a movie called Species?
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't sound like I feel like I'm revisiting a repressed memory. I don't want to do that. But I think that there was that era of, it was genetic engineering. It certainly had that idea that they made explicit in Jurassic Park is we can do this, but should we? And it never, I'm trying to think. And Joe, I wonder if you could, was there ever a movie about genetic engineering where they put two different animals together or some kind of human animal hybrid that ended well, that ended with kind of a walk off into the sunset? I can't think of a single one.
Yeah, walking back from the end of all these films, it was never a good idea. So it was never like, oh, we did this, and it's like a romantic comedy with this genetic hybrid animal that was created. There's always a problem.
Well, that's my favorite part of the Jurassic Park movies is about 3/4 of the way into every one, there's some kind of scene where they say, what have we done? And a lot of terrible things happen. But then they come right back in the next one. They're like, yeah, we're just doing it again.
Oh, yeah. People are like, oh, yeah, there's dinosaurs in the sky now. That's just, that happened a couple of years ago, and we're just sort of getting used to it still.
Oh, by the way, and Doug, this is a nice tidbit of science from the first Jurassic Park, which they immediately wiped away for exposition purposes as soon as they could, which was they deprived the dinosaurs of certain amino acids.
They can produce lysine, so they theoretically wouldn't be able to survive off the island. And that's ripped right out of real genetic engineering. The bacteria that people engineered, they would purposely make weakling so that if they accidentally got flushed down the drain, they'd die. But it didn't work in the movies, and sometimes it doesn't work in real life.
You know why? Because life finds a way.
That's it.
So I heard.
And it's actually, I said Ian Malcolm was a prophet, or Michael Crichton. That statement is it. It applies to all kinds of real life problems, like, say, antimicrobial resistance. So our microorganisms become resistant to our antibiotics. It's all life finding a way.
Yeah, I did hear a pharmacologist one time say, basically all antibiotics are ways to create superbugs because, that's how they work. Unless you wipe out every single one, the one that remaining is stronger than the originals and will come up with a way to get around your antibiotics.
But then to flip it back into our topic, people have been making genetically engineered viruses that infect bacteria to kill the bacteria that are becoming resistant to the antimicrobials. So we're producing genetically engineered viruses, which you could get a patent on.
I think there was one Mission Impossible that turned on. No, there was actually a lot of movies that turn on letting a virus loose in the world too.
Absolutely. I don't recall a genetically engineered one though. It's got to be out there.
I think it was one of the. All I picture is Tom Cruise jumping out of a building, but that's literally any movie. But Joe, do you remember the one with Philip Seymour Hoffman? I think that was a genetically engineered virus where
that was a good Mission Impossible. Yeah, I mean, there's like 6 or 7 of them now. They all sort of run together a little bit.
Look for the one with a car chase.
Really narrowing it down there, Mike.
No, look for the one with a car chase and then a jumping out of a building, possibly, and I can't promise this, walking away from an explosion in slow motion without reacting to the explosion.
I don't know how they make a movie around all these things that need to be in every Mission Impossible movie. It's a lot of it's filled in already for them. They just got to slap a little bit of plot in there, and We'll slap a new number on the end of it and release it.
So Doug, science-wise, I guess let's take our last walk around Jurassic Park. What are we missing scientifically, or what have we overlooked? What's interesting that we see as we walk around? Hopefully the electric fences stay up.
Scientifically, I think one day you are going to see something like a dinosaur walking around. Which way it's going to be created, it's probably more like the reverse engineering approach. Someone's going to start with a bird and modify the bird so it regresses back into what birds once were. When we can look forward to that, I don't know. But as far as de-extinction projects go, people are actively working on them. Right now, there's this thing called a Bacardo. It's a mountain ibex. It died in 2000. They tried to clone it, wasn't working, but they still have cells from it, so they're going to try to bring it back. And there's things called gastric brooding frogs that they're trying to bring back in Australia. They're probably going to be successful. So we're going to learn those lessons. We're going to go back, and I think someday we are going to see Jurassic Park walking around.
By the way, this is an IP Goes Pop exclusive. There will be Jurassic Park. You heard it here on IP Goes Pop. Mark this down. You're going to remember this podcast. Kids, start making your holiday wish lists for dinosaurs. It's not that far away, so you could get your heads out of your video games. Wow, I'm really dating myself there. But Joe, final thoughts.
This is great. It was great to hear about all the new technology out there with this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more movies bringing this in, and it just shows you how forward-looking some of these movies can be. We're talking about a movie almost 30 years ago, and still very relevant. Technology still advancing in the space, and a lot of times you'll see stuff in fiction make its way into science because people are extremely creative and intelligent and can make these seemingly unbelievable things into reality.
And Doug, thank you so much for the insight. I hope you can come back. In fact, I'm thinking of, possibly a whole Michael Crichton episode where we can go through some of his other books, because he does include a lot of science that does overlap with the world of intellectual property. Love to have you back. Thank you for you explained it in a really straightforward way. Joe, as always, you've seen it all, and you always help out on the pop culture side. So thanks again. I know you'll be back next episode. And, I think it was once said, and I think it's really applicable to this podcast, and in a very deep way: open the door, get on the floor, everybody walk the dinosaur. So for all of us here at IP Goes Pop, keep listening, and we will be back. Thanks a lot.
The IP Goes Pop podcast series is created and produced by Volpe Koenig, an intellectual property law firm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Visit us at vklaw.com.